First, just
nice. No.
Is it like I said? Is it back?
No. The one is in my eye. Look what I'm wearing. Look what I'm wearing.
Yeah, but you're
What for?
Show
me.
Check your shirt.
Go wash your hands first.
Look what I'm wearing.
Go do it again.
Look what I'm wearing.
It's amazing.
Honestly, right? Remember that one time I was bleeding? I needed a band-aid. You told me to be quiet and wait. I was bleeding out.
But I gave you one at the end of class.
I was bleeding out. I could have.
I've seen bleeding out. You aren't bleeding out. Believe you me, the first time you actually see bleeding out, you're like, whoa. I guess I've never been hurt
What was the
before.
most traumatic experience you ever saw in the army?
You cut somebody's.
Nah, I'm not going there. But yeah, the first time you see someone truly bleeding out, you'll be amazed by one, how much blood is in the human body, and two, by your huge inadequacies as a human being to help someone. Like you see someone help them.
I'm bleeding out my jugular vein.
The neck is actually an easy one because you can reach and you can stop, but I don't want to get too descriptive, but the femoral artery right here, it goes right here. That one's like that's your done.
Because there's like a hole right there.
Well, first off, what initially happens is the vein or the artery gets sucked back into the body, right? And the issue is that when it's on a neck or something like that, you can reach and you can put pressure and hold it down, right? There's problems with the anatomy. Problems with the anatomy that the femoral artery gets sucked back in there and you can't find it. So all you wind up is just blood just squirting everything. That's when you hope that you have a medic with you. And then the medic does something and then eventually they're like, well, I can't do anything, it's a femoral artery, it's hard to reach. They have these things called hemostats. There's these like scissor looking things that clamp down. They're called clamps. Officially they're hemostats, but they have a locking mechanism on them. Yeah. So they take those things and they just jam them in there and clamp them down.
That feels good.
Oh, and then the person's obviously screaming because it hurts like ridiculous.
Because it's on his.
Well, yeah, because what?
You're getting open to wound. You see how fast your blood spurts out.
I mean,
I remember opening a job.
It doesn't really until you slice. Well, you guys are in biology, right?
Yep.
So give me the system. What's the system called? That carries blood.
Reproductive system.
Clearly not. What's
Muscles.
the system that carries blood?
Veins.
Arteries.
Those are parts of it.
Oh.
So you have like a respiratory system, the system that involves breathing. The system that involves blood is called the
Vacuole system.
Pyroplasm.
Have you not had this yet in biology?
Cardiovascular.
Circulatory system.
Oh.
The circulatory system is made up of the heart, which is the pump, and then you have the stuff that carries the blood, which are called. He was naming it. The tubes are called
Arteries.
That's one. Veins, arteries. What else?
Muscles.
Those don't carry blood. What happens between a vein and an artery?
A connection.
What's that called?
No clue.
Positive.
They're the small.
A vein.
No, those are large. Between an artery, which carries oxygen, and a vein, which carries deoxygenated blood, are
Tendon.
the things that actually attach to your cells.
Chicken tendon.
The smallest part. This is why you technically bleed. You get bruises. They're called capillaries.
I knew
Oh
that.
my gosh.
And like, I'm not gonna. When you hit something, it causes a.
Landmark. I need a bandage.
Eventually, it causes a bruise. Are you guys listening?
Yeah.
A bruise is basically what happens if you just open up those tiny tubes called capillaries, and the blood is leaking out into the rest of your body.
That sounds scary.
If you carefully, quiet guys, if you carefully open up the body, right? You can't do it because you eventually get capillaries. But if you could, there wouldn't be blood anywhere. right? You have to actually rupture one of those tubes for blood. Blood stays in those tubes. Blood doesn't come out of those tubes. It stays in the tube.
Oh, I thought you just like open your body and then there's blood collecting out.
Because what happens is you got to use a scalpel or some sharp object. You're cutting into a capillary, and for her, like, she's bleeding. Obviously, if you have a large rupture of one of your larger tubes, veins and arteries, it is a very traumatic situation that needs to be taken care of immediately. When you break a capillary, they're so small that one, the leakage is minimal, and then two, you have stuff inside your body, they're described as little threads of spaghetti. That what happens is as soon as you get a rupture, they come together and they form
Scars.
They form clots.
Blood clots.
The clotting action of your blood is what stops the blood flow out of all the tubes. The issue with a vein in a capillary is one, the pressure and the amount of fluid is so high that it blows out the clots.
So what if your blood can't clot?
Blood can't clot. That's a disease called hemophilia, and they have medicine for it. And that's like a life-threatening disease. Like, you don't live through stuff like that.
My friend has that.
But they have medicine for it. You got to take for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And as you read history, you're going to read about all this inbreeding that goes on between kings and queens and royalty. And one of the things is that disease was passed on through heredity. You don't get bruises. What happens is you get really strong, circulatory system.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you can have bruises and you can't see them. Oh, okay.
I don't see you.
All right.
Let me try
No, I agree.
Exactly.
Enough of the biology. Now I've proven that you guys weren't paying any attention during biology class.
No, he's just very.
I mean, it doesn't help that I talk to no, he really doesn't.
You just agreed.
I took biology sophomore. Freshman year was physical science, but biology was sophomore in my high school. I'll just say it was one of the best classes I ever had, and it wasn't necessarily because I had a great teacher. It was just all this knowledge about how I thought the body worked and how I finally figured out how the body really worked.
How do I get that run mark?
All right, back up here. Let's do some math. Questions on the homework? All right. Yes. Number. Now I need everyone to be quiet so we can actually get some math stuff done. Number
16.
16 on the written exercises. Way to go.
That was easy.
No, I didn't know.
Number 16, and I do remember the conversation that you were having with Hannah, and she said, "Oh, by the way, you got a mixture of centimeters and kilometers. You need to change one to the other, vice versa. Doesn't matter which one. Me, I'm always going to change the larger to the smaller, so I don't have to deal with a decimal number. So I'm going to change kilometers, 8 kilometers into centimeters, And you do have to. I mean, this is not going to stop throughout however long you go through school. If you take a science or a math class, you got to be able to convert metric. And the saying is, King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk.
That's embarrassing.
I'm going from kilometers to centimeters. King Henry died by drinking chocolate milk. Okay, so I'm going from K to C. So I'm going in this direction. I'm moving my decimal place to the right, and I'm moving it. You just count letters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm moving that decimal place 5 units to the right. So 8 has a decimal place right here. I need to move it 5 decimal places. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need another 0. 5. So this is what? 800,000. So there are 800,000 centimeters now. I started off with 8 kilometers. Now I have 800,000 centimeters. Now my units are the same. I believe this is the only one. Nope. 15. I give you evens. Yeah, this is the only one you had to do this one. So we have 200 centimeters and 8 kilometers. So if you set up that, there's my ratio now. 200 centimeters to 800,000 centimeters. Now, I told you yesterday when you have a bunch of zeros, the easiest way to do this is cross out 1 here, cross out 1 here, cross out 1 here, cross out 1 there. Now I have 2 over 8,000, which would reduce to 1 over, and you're done. That was number 16, yeah. 1 to 4,000. All right. Here we go. Number 2 is 5 to 3. Number 4 is 2 to 3. Number 6 is 3m cubed over 5. Number 8 is 6s cubed over r. All right, now if you get these, a couple of these wrong, you're like, I'm sure I did this right. It's probably your units. So for instance, on 10, you had to convert hours to minutes or minutes to hours. I would have done hours to minutes, easier, just multiply by 60. Number 10 is 16 to 3. Number 12, we just said 1 to 4,000. Number 14, once again, I would convert weeks to days, not days to weeks.
Yeah, that was 16.
Sorry, you're right. 12 is 1 to 10. 14 is 3 to 7. 16 is 1 to 4,000. 18, how many ounces in a pound? So I'd multiply that 1 or 2 pounds times 16, I'd get 32, right? So 13 to 32. And then 20 is 209. 22, 18 to 1. That's a good ratio. And then we have problems 3, 4, 8, 9. All you do is attach an x, solve the equation, find out what x is, and then multiply it by the original ratio. Number 3 was 162 players. Number 4 was 360 women. Number 8, 30, 60, 90 degrees. And number 9, 400 cubic meters. That was it. All right. Today is medium. For some of you, this is going to be easy. For some of you, it's going to be medium. But it shouldn't be harder than medium. Do what?
Wow.
Chart? Yeah. I've never had anybody say that, but yeah, that's exactly what we're doing.
I'm making your board over here.
My erase has been just not.
What?
This hasn't been working.
Clean it.
Oh.
Go get a paper towel. There-
It was like,
That's a pee.
yeah.
He's gonna pee on my whiteboard.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, wow.
What is that system called?
The urinary system.
It's called the. Well, I think it's called the excretory system, or the. No, maybe not. It's called the.
The Coochie system.
That system contains your kidneys, your
Artery.
It's called the. Somebody help me out.
No clue. You actually not know?
No.
I'm trying to think.
Oh, you're trying to hear it. Of course I know.
It's called the. I don't know. I'm going to look it up.
You can still got there.
I remember in biology class, we had one cat for the classroom. And so one cat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the teacher would get up and say, today we're going to do the respiratory system. So we had a coloring book, and we had to, right. So you had to, he would say, hey, he would have the cat in front of him, and then he'd jam his hand inside the cat, and he would go, these are the lungs.
You could have told me it was 2 pages.
What?
Because they're saying it's 2 pages because it's and not that. Is
Just
that
front and back.
It starts at 7. There's no doubt.
There's 2 pages.
Something went wrong with the copy machine then.
7 to 9.
Okay.
Mine starts at 1.
Something went wrong with the copy machine. It was supposed to do double-sided. Sorry about that. But yeah, he would have the cat in front of him, and he would have the normal human being thing. And then what he would do is he'd say, okay, I want you guys, we would label the parts of the lungs, and then he would walk around with the lungs in his hand and say, you see of a cat.
So there's still lungs.
Yeah. And then in senior year, I took anatomy and physiology, and we got to dissect our own cat.
Cat dissection.
But I always found that would be it was really cool.
So what do I do? I want to learn how to do this.
Just pull it down slightly. Now let go. No, don't literally let go, but
Oh.
you have to hold on to it, but let go of the tension. Otherwise, it'll stop as soon as you hold tension.
I said education on natural biology.
You don't have to pull it down that far, but you have to let go of it. You gotta. Rowan,
I didn't do that thing.
you can no longer touch anything.
I didn't do anything. It's against things I walked away. I do it. I didn't do that thing.
Well, Rowan, if you hadn't done anything, it would still be on the wall.
And he messed it up, so I tried to fix it that I didn't make.
All right. Now, just leave everything down there. I'll try to fix it during lunch. All right. Back up here. All right, here we go. Tristan, probably have to find a seat. But you didn't know what you're doing. All right, time out, everybody. All right, waiting on you guys. Make it. Do it quietly. All right, here we go. Proportions. Recall, right, from yesterday's class, we did ratios. A ratio is comparison of two numbers using division. Usually there's context to that ratio. Boys to girls, girls to boys. It is a fraction since it's compared using division, but there's some context to what these numbers mean. Today, we're not going to be dealing with ratios. Box 1, write this down, box 1A. We're going to be dealing with something called a proportion. And the only thing a proportion is, what's difference between that and a ratio, right, is that I'm going to give you two ratios with an equal sign between them. That's the only difference. It's going to be two ratios with an equal sign between them. So we're going to take what we did yesterday, one ratio, and we're going to add a second ratio, put an equal sign. Now, not any two fractions are equal to each other. I mean, 1/3 is not equal to a half. But certain fractions are equal to each other. And those are the ones that form proportions. For instance, 1/2 is the same as 5/10. Therefore, I can put an equal sign, and I've made what's called a proportion. Now, this is not the first year you've learned proportions. Easily 4 years ago, you were introduced to proportions. And as the years progressed, you did more with proportions. The first thing you did was made a proportion. And then maybe 2 years ago, you started doing what with proportions? You remember? The math teacher took an eraser and erased one of these numbers, and you had to figure out what it was. Hey, you need to stop. Okay? So, if you have a proportion, here comes the Algebra 1. If you have a proportion, A, B, C, D just represent any possible number. If you have a proportion, we can do a little bit of algebra. Watch the algebra. I'm going to choose to multiply both sides by what's written here on the bottom, BD. I'm going to choose, you'll see why here in a second, why I chose those numbers, or those letters. I'm going to choose to multiply both sides times what's written on the bottom, BD. And remember, in algebra, you can do anything you want as long as you do the same thing to both sides of the equation. I just did it. The B's would
Cancel.
The D's would
Cancel.
And you would be left with
D. Oh.
DA is equal to CB. This is what allows you to do that thing that you were taught 2 years ago called cross multiplication. Cross multiplication, now let me clear that up and rewrite it. Cross multiplication, remember, is that times that is equal to this times, that's what I just wrote. Your math teacher 2 years ago didn't do that because you didn't have the algebra skills to understand, but there's the proof of why cross multiplication works. We just do a little bit of algebra to this thing, it turns into that. That says cross multiplication. So today's class is actually on cross multiplication. You're like, well, I already did that 2 years ago. Okay, well, they're a little bit more challenging in Algebra 1. Okay, so write this down in 1B. This is going to have a lot of stuff. So write small in 1B. right? You don't need to write this. What you need to write is this. Write that. Write this. All I did was take that proportion and I wrote it in ratio or colon form. Remember, that would be A to B is equal to C to D. And I made them colored because, well, you'll see here in a second. I'm going to give names to this. The last 2 years, you didn't get names to this. Now, all of a sudden, it gets complicated because I'm going to give names to these letters. Now, remember, the letters represent numbers. The red ones are on the outside. So a good name would have been called the outside numbers. Literally, we did call them the outside numbers, just a synonym of outside. We're going to call the red numbers. That would be the A and the D. That would be right here. We're going to call the red numbers, we're going to call them the extremes. The red numbers are going to be called the extremes, and the inner numbers are called the means. And it takes some geometry that I explain why they're called the means.
So then D and B are the means.
B and C are called the means.
Oh, yeah.
Now, it makes sense that the outside ones are called the extremes. They're on the outside. Doesn't make sense when they're in proportion form, why they would be called the extremes. But when it's in colon form, it makes sense because they're the ones on the outside. Now, why are we giving these weird names to them? Well, you're going to see here this year and next year in the geometry. For the people taking geometry, this is chapter 8. So. Okay, so what do you need to write in box 1B? Everything from the word straight down. One, there's cross multiplication, AB times BC, or AB is equal to BC. And then these two words, extremes and means. Doesn't make much sense if we talk about extremes and means in terms of the proportion, or even this part, but it does make sense right here. Extremes and means. My teacher in 8th grade and in Algebra 1 would always say, the product of the means equals the product of the extreme. Where's the word extremes? I should say extremes. That's a mistake. Nobody caught it the last 2 years. The product of the means equals the product of the extremes.
But then that just comes into that. So you have to move everything down a notch.
What?
You have to move.
No, everything's good. It's just that last word should have been extremes, not means.
I thought you had to add.
All right. So what are we really doing today? All we're doing is cross multiplication. And you guys know how to do simple cross multiplication. So we'll start off with, not Algebra 1, with some simple, pre-algebra and pre-algebra cross multiplication. So they're going to take a proportion. The math teacher's going to take an eraser, and they're going to erase one of these numbers, right? And they're going to ask you what the other one is. And how you figure this out is the knowledge that the product of the extremes, this times this, is equal to the product of the means, that times that. Okay? So they take a proportion, and then they erase one of the numbers. You got to figure it out. So it turns into an algebra problem. Take a proportion, erase one of the numbers. I erased 25 and ask you, what's this x? So how do you figure it out? You cross multiply. This times this is equal to this times this. So we write that down. So that would be 3 times 20 is equal to 12 times x. And then we solve that. Well, 3 times 20 is
16.
And then we divide both sides by 12, so x is equal to 5. Okay? Is that all we're doing today? Yes, it is. Literally all we're doing today. This fraction or the proportions are going to get really ugly. But that's all we're doing today. Cross multiplication. Right?
I thought you were going to say that's all we're doing today. And
no, this is all we're doing today. We're doing cross multiplication. The previous 5 to 10 minutes was just an explanation of why we're allowed to do this. I can't just say, hey, just multiply these two numbers and it works. Okay, cross multiplication. 3 times 4 is equal to
12.
5 times x. 3 times 4 is equal to 5 times x. So that's our setup. You're like, no, you wrote x times. It's the same thing. Multiplication is commutative. Now, this doesn't give us a nice, pleasant answer.
2.
What's the answer here, by the way?
Well, because 5, 10. We're dividing by 5, right?
We got to divide both sides by 5. So what's the answer?
2x.
Okay, you're in Algebra 1. So guess what the answer is?
2.4.
And it's not 2.4. I mean, it is 2.4, but you're in Algebra 1. Guess what the answer is? 12 over 5. That's it. You're not required to change it to a decimal number. Okay? All you're required to do is reduce that fraction. You're not required to make it into a mixed number. You can if you want. That's extra work. 12/5 is a perfectly fine answer. The difference between last year pre-algebra and algebra 1 is you're going to get uglier answers. And the problem, this isn't an ugly problem, the problem will get uglier, meaning like it's going to be more complex. But the cross multiplication doesn't change. Who's lost on cross multiplication? We're going to do a bunch of these. They're all in front of you right now. You can see as we get lower in the boxes,
It gets harder.
it gets uglier. It doesn't get harder, it gets uglier.
Body shaming.
The process doesn't change. It's just cross multiplication. So all we're going to do, yeah, Ryland said 2.4. He's right. But Ryland had to divide 12 by 5. So when you do one extra step, guess what? Your chances of getting it wrong went up by an extra step. How about you just leave it as 12 over 5 and be done with it? Okay, well, I'm going to have a calculator. Okay, then your finger can press the wrong number. I'm going to show you the decimal approximation for every one today, but you don't. Who's doing their homework right now? Does it say right answer as a decimal?
No.
Does it say right the answer as a decimal? So the answer is 12 over 5. Be done with it. Okay. A little bit uglier, right? This is box 2. Oh, right? I got a negative, right? I got more than just a variable. I got a coefficient to it. It's still cross multiplication. Chris, what am I multiplying?
You're multiplying 4 and 15 into a 21.
It's a -2, but yeah, that's all I'm doing. 4 15s is 60. That will give you -42. Last step, Chris. Where's the variable? What's attached to it? Do the inverse.
The variable is attached to 60.
Keep talking. Where's the variable? What's attached? How it's attached? Do the inverse.
It's attached by multiplication. So we divide it.
By
10. No, sorry.
what number are we trying to get rid of?
60.
So what are we going to divide both sides by?
60.
Now, is that truly the last step?
Yes.
I mean, so that's the answer, -42 over 60?
You have to reduce.
I got to reduce, right? So technically, yeah, it's the last step, but if there's reduction involved, we got to reduce. All right, what goes into 42 and 60?
2.
At least 2 for sure. So 21 over -21 over 30, and I think that's all we get, right? No, 21 and 30, 3 goes into 21 and 30, right?
7.
Right. So what actually goes into 42 and 60? What is it?
6.
6 goes into both, right? So even if you didn't know it was 6 from the start, I mean, most of us would probably say 2. Let's divide by 2. But then you go, oh, wait, it was 6, right? Haley, you're looking. Okay, do you understand cross multiplication? Okay, all we're doing is cross multiplication. End of story right there. If you understand cross multiplication, you know what to do. So the only thing left to do are the mechanics, the actual multiplication, division, all that jazz. Can you solve an equation when it looks like this? You got no problems. I mean, the problem is doing it, right? And I'm saying you have no problems on understanding. Don't worry. The rest of the stuff comes as it comes. It's like everybody's cracking things today.
What was it, your head?
No, that was another. It's a me.
Oh, that's you.
No. All right. This is a weird one. Rylan, what do you think we do here? Do what?
8 over 1.
8 over n.
No.
Oh, I know. Can I say? The 8 over 1.
Put the 8 over 1 in its proportion. Right?
Oh, no.
He said put 8 over n. Is what he said.
Oh.
Yeah, you just put it over 1 and now it's proportion. All right, Kaylee, what am I doing now? Okay. 3 times 1 is n by itself.
8n.
So what are you going to do? Do what? What do you mean by that? Okay. No, I agree. So by the way, what's the answer? You're done. Yeah, exactly. This is a weird, by the way, this is probably not algebra 1. This is more pre-algebra. That's how you handle this weird one where you just got an 8 by itself. Okay? Sorry. All right, questions on that one? I'm putting a decimal approximation, or this is the exact answer, but you don't need to write as a decimal answer. All right, see if you can do box 4 all by yourself.
Okay.
You're starting off right, Chris. Yep, I like that. Yeah, you're good. Boring. Yep, look at that stuff. That one instead. And by the way, it's done the same way. It's no different. Just the algebra is longer. Just do cross and put a circle around those two numbers. Some people call it the butterfly method because.
I was doing this.
Okay. Well, that is the harder. Just multiply 2 days. Where's your multiplication? You said you were going to have every day. That's what's slowing you down. It's not you don't know what to do. It's what's slowing you down is just the basic math things. Yeah.
Okay, so I need help so I can get this right.
So what's 5 times 3?
15.
You write that.
Oh. And then x, solve x.
Write that. One step at a time. Right? And then get x by itself. Yeah, that's right. I mean, you're in algebra 1. Don't expect there to be, a nice pretty answer of 2. Sometimes that's the case, but you don't expect there to be ugly answers.
Now I have to divide it by what?
Do what?
I have to divide it by
5. 5. That's not a 2.
5.
It's not even a 5.
15.
What's
I don't
attached?
know.
What's attached to x? That's what we need to get rid of.
Oh, okay. Me. 2.
All right. First one. Let's see. Cross multiply. 12 times x is 12x. 3 times 5 is 15.
And then
You don't get a very nice answer when we divide both sides by 12. You get 15 12s. But what goes into 15 and 12? Well, 3 goes into 15, and 3 goes into 12. 5. Okay. Yes? Because you divided by 15 instead of divided by 12. Okay. 80?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get the last.
80, you're going to tell me the setup. What's the setup?
Setup. I don't know.
Just do cross multiplication.
Cross multiply.
Yeah, but what would they? What do you want me to multiply?
8 times 3.
It's not a 3.
3x.
Okay, so 8 times 3x equals.
Oh no.
Yeah, but 8 times 3x equals the other cross.
And then 5 times 4.
That's the setup. Okay.
So that's
So now all you're left with is doing that. This is what Chris was stuck on. Chris, you get an answer here for the next step?
So the 5 and 4 is 20.
Yep.
And 8 and 3 is 20.
20 what?
23.
24. Okay. All right. Now, Chris, tell me what the next step would be.
To do division for, well, it's it.
Both sides by?
24.
That's the next step. You got it. Piper, what goes into 20, 24? 2, right? And there might be another number, but 2 strikes me as being a number. That would give me 10 over 12, but 2 goes into that. So actually divide top and bottom by 4, right? And that gives me. You got it. Everybody look at box number 6.
You don't want to look at it.
I
Oh my
mean,
gosh.
the only difference is that it just gets more complex.
Wait, X
The
is 2 is
process is not gonna change. We're not doing box 6 yet. I'm saying that the process is still the same. All right, you're in algebra 1, so here's an algebra 1 proportion. Okay, it just gets more complex. It doesn't change. Porter, give me the setup.
X minus 4 times 15
Equals,
equals 3 times 2.
that's the setup. Now you just got to do the math. Do you see the distributive property, everybody? Yes? No? You see the distributive property? Can anybody do that in their head real quick?
Oh, it's 15x and minus 60.
She can do it in her head. 3 times 2 is 6, right? Okay. Is that challenging? No. Right? You do have to do the math correctly. I'm not going to negate the fact that sometimes that's the major hurdle. But I'm saying big picture wise is just cross multiplication. Add 60 to both sides and then divide by what goes into 15 and 66. 6, no. 3, right? 3 goes into 66 22 times. 3 goes into 15 5 times. So 22 over 5. You tell me, right? Conceptually wise, do we know what to do? The issue is just going to be doing the calculations, okay? So how do you reduce your number of mistakes? Well, some of you absolutely still need to have a multiplication table in front of you. Others of you just do it slowly. Make sure you double check your work. All right. The only way they get more challenging is that we have lots of variable expressions running around. Okay, this is as complicated as it will get today. Doesn't get any more complicated than this, box 6. Okay? Give me the setup.
2x times 5. Yeah, I think.
Okay, the setup would be cross multiplication.
Oh, just cross it like all the way across? I don't know.
All the way across.
Okay, so 2x. Oh, wait. How do you cross
Just
it?
read it, what it says.
2x minus 3
Times,
over 5.
you've got to make the cross. Okay, you just look straight up and down.
Yeah.
I want to cross.
Okay, so 2x times. Or
Read the whole thing.
2x minus 3
Times
x plus 3.
Mm-mm.
No.
butterfly.
Oh, I see now.
And if you have to do that on your paper every time, do that.
All right, x plus 2 times 5 and 2x
Equals.
minus 3 times 6 equals 6.
Yeah, I think you said it right. Okay.
Yeah. Or something like that.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody lost in what he just did? That's just the setup. That's not the answer. That's not even remotely close to the answer. That's just the start. Okay.
So it's 12x.
Kaylee, can you do that in your head?
I did it on
Okay. Well, then what's the next step?
the you
And I'm not saying you got to do this in your head. There's plenty of you out there that when you do the distributive property, you're going to want to do arrows. There's others of you out there that can literally look at that and say, oh, I can do that in my head. We're in Algebra 1, we're past Christmas. You know, you reach a point where some of you start doing this in your head, right? And that's okay. Not okay in pre-algebra, but okay in Algebra 1. Keep going.
12x minus 18 equals 5x plus 10.
Perfect. Variables on both sides. Landon, what do we do when there's variables on both sides?
You combine them.
Okay, how do we do that for this one?
You add 5x to 12x.
Because to get rid of a 5x, you add
You
5x.
subtract 5x.
So remember, we have variables on both sides. We get rid of one. The biggest one or the smallest one? Smallest one first. It's not a requirement, but it keeps us from having negative answers and dealing with negative numbers. So we subtract 5x from both sides. That would give us, read.
7x minus 18 equals 10.
You see what he did? And then it's just a two-step equation. Talk it through real quick.
You add 18 to both sides, which we get 28, and then you divide 7.
Do you remember pre-algebra last year when we did this problem? I'd show you every single step. How many steps did I show you here? Did I ever show you I'm adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? All I wrote was from step to answer to answer to answer. Welcome to the club, right? Do some of you need to write that down? Yes, some of you do. Like write down, like when I added 18 to both sides, some of you need to write that down. Others of you can say, yeah, I'm adding 18 to both sides, that's 28. Does everyone understand what the point I'm trying to make here? Yeah. We got multiple levels of ability here. Some people need to skip a step because it's painful if they don't. And others of you need to write the step because you need to see that you're doing 10 plus 18. Okay? pick and choose where you're at. You get it wrong, and then I'll have a conversation with you. Like, hey, you skipped the step and you don't know how to do 10 plus 18. You need to write it down. Others of you can do 10 plus 18 in your head. Okay, box 7. I'll give you a 20-second head start.
I'm scared.
Does everybody know how to get this started? Thank you, Landon.
There is no box 7.
It's right. It's on the board. So when they were handing out the 2 sheets of paper, you only got one.
Oh, yeah, because you're in the back, so I don't want to give you another one.
So just write it down right here.
Wow.
Aiden, you good to get started?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know how to do like the problem.
Okay. So. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
And if you want to skip to right to just write the cross products, that's fine as well too.
They're over on the desk, Tristan.
He's okay. There's only 2 after this. And they're both word problems.
Yeah. No.
Don't be intimidated by the word problems. They're actually pretty easy.
Makes sense.
We're going to move the smaller of the 2 x's.
Mhm.
The smaller.
Make it
So what are we going to do both sides?
Right.
Subtract 20. Subtract 20.
After that,
You're gonna have 5x minus 3 in parentheses and then 6. Yeah.
Then you're going to put parentheses around this.
Equals.
You remember you're multiplying by 6
4.
times 6. So you put 6
And then
right
in the
here.
parentheses 5x
Yep.
plus
And then
3.
put an equal sign. Do the same thing to that.
And then you gotta just like solve each of these.
Did you copy it down?
And then 30.
No, you guys, we were doing biology lesson. It was up there the whole time. You guys were.
He was
It'll be up there in a second. Let's wait. All right, here we go. The setup that I saw, at least on every paper that I looked at, looked like this. Now, some people put the 6 on this side. Some it doesn't truly matter, right? It's just a distributive property. Every person that I looked at had 30x minus 18 is equal to 20x plus 12.
Yep.
I didn't look at everyone's paper, but everyone that I looked at had that. Kaylee said, well, this is the step that I'm stuck on. Remember, when you have variables on both sides, your next step after you simplify both sides is to move the x to one side, and we recommend always moving the smaller of the 2. So I'm going to subtract 20x from both sides. 30 minus 20 is 10.
Okay.
And then it turns into, talk me through. Next step,
Turns into, I don't know, I forgot.
what are we getting rid of, the 10 or the negative 18?
10x. So you would divide them.
Okay, always on a 2-step equation, get rid of addition subtraction. So what am I going to do to both sides?
Divided by 18.
How is 18 attached to x?
Oh, okay. So divided by 10. That's what I said. Add.
How is 18 attached to x by subtraction? How do you get rid of subtraction?
Division.
Addition.
Addition.
So I'm going to add 18 to both sides. That gives me 30. Then we can
Divide.
by.
Good job.
All right. We feel confident on this?
Yeah.
We got 8 minutes left in class. We got one thing left to do. Word problems. Okay. Now, usually people panic. Okay, yesterday we did word problems. You guys did it, and no one complained. Like there wasn't a single person said, I didn't get the word problem. Today's the same thing. And today will be easy as well, too, so pay attention. Not all word problems are easy, but yesterday's are easy. Today will be easy. Okay, now you can put it back up. All right. I want you to write this down right here on your paper somewhere. Unit 1 over unit 2 is equal to unit 1 over unit 2. This is the magical proportion of how you solve any word problem that involves proportions. When you have a word problem that involves proportion, they're going to give you 2 things. One's going to be called unit 1, one's going to be called unit 2. To set up the proportion, you identify those 2 things. And all word problems that have proportions will wind up with 1, 2, 3 numbers. All of them. Guess what you'll be doing? You'll be finding the 4th number. That's the x. All word problems that involve proportions, this is the proportion. All word problems have 1, 2, 3 numbers on it. You find the fourth one. You get a little bit of flexibility on these type of word problems. You get to figure out what's unit 1 and what's unit 2. This word problem, Rowan's going to read real quick and tell me what are the 2 things that it talks about.
Flour and muffins.
It talks about flour and muffins.
And
You get to pick which is the flour and which is the muffin. Now, we'll see. There's only 2 ways you could have done it. Maybe I did it his way, maybe I didn't. So what do you want for unit 1? Flour or muffin? He wants to put flour on the top. He wants to put muffins on the bottom. I put flour on the top, muffins on the bottom. No, I didn't pay him to do that. Okay. Now, all we're going to do is plug in the numbers. The first line tells me the ratio. What's the ratio? It says 4.
Where'd you get a 4?
F-O-R, not F-O-U-R.
Oh,
4, 5 pounds of flour. You get, there's your ratio. For 5 pounds, I made the 4 up. For 5 pounds of flour, you get, well, there's your unit 1, unit 2. So you write that down. Okay?
date Nate muffins.
So 5 to 20. Because he chose to do flour. Now we could have done the other way. You get 120 over 5. We'll still get the right answer. Trust me. I said there's always going to be 3 numbers up there. What's the third number up there?
2 pounds.
2 pounds of what?
Flour.
Why did I make it red?
It's flour.
Because flour is red. We wanted to put red on what? The top or the bottom? Because he chose it that way. If you chose it the other way, then you'd put your 2 on the bottom. But he chose to put flour on the top, so we put flour on the top. I said they'll give you 3 numbers. The fourth number, Hannah said, is going to be our x. Okay, there's your x. Can you solve that? By the way, all the ones, the word problems are easy. Like there's no x plus 2 or 4x minus 5. Okay, what's the setup? Keep talking, Chris.
Oh, okay, 5x and then, yeah, I lost it.
Well, you were trying, but just tell me what to do.
Just multiply 2 and 1.
That's what I was hoping you were going to say, right? That's 240. Then the last step would be
5 over 5 underneath 240
and then reduce.
Yeah.
And it turns out that reduces to 48. All right, you tell me, easy or hard?
Easy.
I'm not lying. All the word problems, there's going to be 3 numbers.
Yeah.
They're going to incorporate 2 quantities. You get to pick, but you can't just willy-nilly put the numbers wherever you want. You got to pick a pattern and you got to stick to that pattern. All right, box 8, let's do it.
Should I get it set up right?
Well, we'll find out here in a second. What 2 things are in the problem?
Gas and miles.
We got gas and we got miles. All right, you pick. What do you want to do? What do you want to be unit 1, unit 2?
I'm gonna do gas on top and then miles on bottom.
He wants to do opposite of what I wanted to do. He wants to do gas on the top, miles on the bottom. So he sets the pattern. You can do it the other way around. I did the other way around. That's the pattern. You got to stick with it. What's the ratio? It's always from the first sentence.
8 over 224.
Is 8 gas or is 8 miles?
8.
That's all you got to do is make sure you're not messing this up. So we get 8 over
224 miles.
Okay, and I said there's always going to be 3 numbers up there. What's the third number?
13.
Is that gas or is that miles?
Gas.
And does that go on the top or bottom? You set the pattern,
Top, yeah.
and he set it on the top, so I put 13 right there.
X.
And then you solve that proportion. Okay, big, huge numbers, but it's just a proportion. I chose to do it the other way around. Oh, no, I did the same way you did it. What do you know? I thought I did miles per gallon. I didn't. Can you solve that proportion?
I couldn't.
Yeah, but I'm not saying you're always gonna get it right. I'm saying, can you take it from here? Yeah, okay. I mean, that's what I'm teaching you is the process. Okay. Turns out the answer is way off.
Oh my
I
gosh.
did it wrong.
How did you do it?
I put the gallons over the miles,
Isn't that what we did?
and then I put X over 13.
The issue is that, what does it say? A tank of miles or a tank of gas? So if you mess up the where you put that third number, are you going to get the wrong answer? Oh, heck yes, you are. This is why I was trying to make a big point of, once you set this pattern, that's the pattern. I mean, I would literally write these words. Doesn't have to be as descriptive. You can put G over M if you wanted. But you got to put something so you don't what Hayden did, which is put the number in the wrong spot. Because this is a lot of work to get to a wrong answer when it's an easy problem. All right, last one, and then lunch.
Yay.
All right, Aiden, what are the two things we're dealing with here?
We're interest, paid interest, and time.
A little bit hard to understand this one, right? It definitely has an interest. That's one of the numbers. The other numbers is
Time.
and it's not time.
Invested.
Right.
Yeah, it's called an investment.
So money, and then there's
Hey, I'm giving Ryland $400 to make me some money. Okay, is that a wise investment? No. Okay, but it's an investment, right? I'm giving him $400, and I'm expecting him to pay me, I don't know, $40, right? And that's my interest, right? So we got investment, and we got interest. Those are our two things. All right, which way do we want to do it?
An interest on top, which is 102.
Okay,
okay, we're done.
I did it the other way around, but it'll still work. So we're not done. We got 2
So
minutes.
we'll just switch it then.
Okay.
Investment on top,
So what's that on top,
1,200,
and then on the bottom?
102.
Okay. We always will have a third number. Is the third number investment or is it interest?
Interest and
So where is that going to go?
bottom, and then X on top.
What does
How
the bottom?
much interest would 600? It doesn't say that 1,600 is interest. It says how much interest would 1,600 invested? All right, so maybe this one's a little bit more trickier than the other ones. But the English words, it's pretty descriptive. How much interest, how much, that's your X, would $1,600 investment, you need to put it on the top. Can you take it from here? Okay, what's the setup?
12 to 1,200 times x equals 1,600 times 100.
And typically people invest more than $1,200 and they get more interest than that. So if you want to be involved in finance, you're going to be dealing with large numbers.
The number is huge.
Yeah.
That's what you gotta calculate.
That's why they write computer programs so they don't screw this up. Because one decimal place can be a bad thing.
Like,
right?
imagine giving a check and you do one wrong decimal place.
Exactly. Anybody got the final answer here? $136.
Imagine having to ask for that money back because you don't have that money to spend.
Just so you know, I mean, when you invest things, how much work are you doing?
A lot.
A lot.
When you invest money, how much work you actually do? You just made $100 for doing no work.
Yeah, we need that.
All right, homework that you guys weren't paying attention to because we were talking about pee or something. I don't know. Blood and pee.
Oh, because he said, let me clean your whiteboard.
And you all thought he said, let me pee on your whiteboard.
Let me pee on that whiteboard.
And then we had the incident.
I'm sorry for laughing so hard. It's just.
Problems are the word problems. So it's written exercises, and then what happens right after that, it's called, this section is called problems. But anytime you see problems, it means word problems.
I don't know how that happened. Let's just stop.
How did it happen is
No,
you let
here's what happened.
go of it.
It stopped halfway, and I let it go for a second, and then it shut off.
It shot up and fell off. It was like, I thought it was gonna stay fixed. It wouldn't go up.
Yeah, it wouldn't
Yeah,
go
it
up.
looked like it wouldn't go up, so you thought it was gonna stay, but it didn't
So
stay.
I let go of
The
it,
first time
and
you
it
got
turned
it,
around
you
and
wanted it to stay, but it didn't.